The next few tutorials will be about various flavors of so-called adaptive or dynamic tunings. These are tunings that change as you play in response to what you play. Just before we get started, I'm going to make reference to this paper here that I authored with some of my co-creators here called Tuning Playfully. It's about tuning in bitKlavier, and it gets really deep in the weeds. I have a link in the description to this video if you want to read the whole thing. It gets pretty hairy, but it's probably the best place to really get a sense of how all of this works. And I'm also going to refer to it in a couple of these tutorials. We'll actually work through some of the figures in the paper in this tutorial. Okay, so let's do some adaptive tuning, and I'm going to scroll down to find the page that I want here, right here. You'll note, first of all, that I've just got direct and tuning, and I've got the keyboard connected to tuning. And in general, always adaptive tunings will require a keyboard input so that it can know what notes you want it to use for doing the adaptive tuning. It could be that you want only some notes to be factored into an adaptive tuning, so in which case you might have a different keyboard and not all of the keys going to it. So let's take a look inside here. And I've got it set here to adaptive 1, and that implies maybe there will be future different adaptive systems like 2 and 3. We will see. Adaptive 1 is super simple, a little bit nutty, but it can actually yield some really interesting results. The basic idea is that the fundamental for your tuning system, right here actually, we're using a just scale here, all the same scales are available here. The fundamental shifts, so currently the fundamental is 60 or middle C. And the fundamental will move based on your playing in specific ways. The way I have it set right now is that the fundamental is going to move every time I change notes, because I've got it set in 2 ways to guarantee that. First of all, it says the maximum number of notes before it changes is 1, which means it's going to change every note I play. Another way to accomplish that is to set the threshold. This is in milliseconds. So if my successive notes are more than 1 millisecond apart, the fundamental will change. So you should be tracking this number as I play. And you might also note these numbers as well, just to see what intervals we're getting. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate a couple things here. So I've got middle C here, and you'll note that if I play a whole step, it's a just whole step, so 2.0, so it's almost 4 cents sharp to equal temperament. If I play another whole step, you notice the whole step is now changed to 64. This is the last note that I play, offset by actually twice that. And this fundamental changes again and again and again and again. And you'll notice actually now we're kind of out of tune, which is interesting. And we'll get to that in a moment. But another useful button here is reset. Reset will set everything back. So, okay, now 60 is my fundamental, and I'm going to play 60 here. Okay. One little experiment that's useful, or demonstration that's useful to try, is you might remember something that happens if you stack perfect fifths, up and up and up and up. Or, and I'm going to reset this, if you alternate that with descending fourths. So this is essentially the same as going up by perfect fifths. And so I'm going all the way around, circle of fifths, till I get back to C. Okay, so you'll notice C is 72, but it's actually 0.235 or 23.5 cents sharp to equal temperament. So if I go down an octave now, my original note, I'm now 23.5 cents sharp to equal temperament. If I reset, it'll go back down to our regular C. So again, Okay, so you should know that that is an example of the Pythagorean comma. And that's what happens when you stack fifths, because fifths with a ratio of 3/2 are actually fundamentally incompatible with octaves, a ratio of 2/1. And you can look at the math for that. At the beginning of these tutorials, I referenced an online course that I made called Reinventing the Piano, and I show how all of that works. So if you want to learn more about that, check that out. So, but this is actually, what's fun about this actually is that this particular configuration of bitKlavier allows you to demonstrate right away the Pythagorean comma. And there are other commas as well, which you could explore if you like. Okay, I want to look now at this couple of these examples right here. So what happens when I play this particular sequence of notes? And you can see that this is going to be changed by a 3/2 because that's a perfect fifth above C. Now this is our new fundamental, and this is going to go by a ratio of 9/8. So 9/8 gives us about 4 cents sharp, so that gets added to these 2 cents, so it's about 6 cents sharp. Now I'm going to go down a sixth, and this, you might remember a major sixth is quite small relative to equal temperament, so this gets actually pushed quite sharp. And so let's just play this, and you can track these numbers down here as well. So 2 cents sharp, 5.9 cents sharp. Now I'm going to go back down to C. Notice it's 21.5 cents, and I go back up, and this is still 5.9 cents sharp. So this here is another comma, and I'll leave it to you to figure out which one that is and why it comes about. But let me show that again. I'm going to reset it. So we've drifted upward. I'm just going to repeat this pattern. Keeps going up and up. Up and up and up. It just drifts up and up and up. And this is a feature of adaptive tunings because in anything other than equal temperament, there's always some variation in the size of the intervals. Intervals are not unique. You have different sizes of whole steps, different sizes of half steps and thirds and so on. And so that means that fundamentally these systems are going to drift if you treat them rigidly. Now let's try a variation on this where, and this gets into some bitKlavier programming too, where we do essentially press this reset button every time we play this C, but we program bitKlavier to do that for us, so we don't have to go and use the mouse. So I'm going to go back out here. I'm going to create a stop sign, and the stop sign is a reset, so it helps you reset. You might have remembered this from modifications. You can reset a modification to what it was before it was modified. But you can also use it with adaptive tuning, so that the adaptive tuning parameters are all reset to their original conditions. So I'm going to set this so that middle C is always going to reset our tuning. So now I play middle C, we're back here, 60 is my fundamental, and now trace this here. It's adaptive, so I go up, and it's 2 cents sharp as before, 5.9 cents sharp as before, but now when I go back down to C, this C is now back down to 0 offsets because of that reset that we set in. And now when I play this A, it's going to be 15.6 cents flat because that's that just major sixth. So these two A's are different. So this system, this setup, doesn't drift. It stays anchored because of the way we program bitKlavier to reset based on particular notes. Now it could drift if we don't play a C, but when we play a C, if we compose our piece, our music, so that it uses that C, then it stays anchored, and instead what we get is this nice little contrast between those two different types of A's. I actually made a little piece that does this, so I'm going to play this little thing because I think it's pretty cute, and it's called Didymus, and I'll leave you to figure out why that is. So here's this little piece using exactly this setup. This isn't the micro etudes. The micro etudes is in the music folder with the bitKlavier distribution. So you have this. Okay, now I'm playing this really badly. I'm not a good pianist, but actually part of what's going on here is that when I'm recording this, there's a lot of latency. So there's a big delay between what I'm hearing and what I'm playing, which makes it kind of hard. I'm going to do the repeat now. Let it, you figure out what's going on here. Okay, now into the coda. I'll let you figure that. Two different C's. Now, yet a different C. All right, you play this yourself and play it fast and even, unlike what you just heard here. Okay, so I'm going to show you one more figure here in this paper, and that's just down here. And one of the things that's kind of fun about this is that I showed you something with fifths and with this sequence of intervals. But if I remove this reset here, I'm going to go back and just literally play ascending halves, whole steps, you'll hear the whole thing drift. And if I go down, it'll drift down. And the explanation is here. Two ascending, just tuned whole steps by 9/8 ratios give you an E that is almost 8 cents sharp to equal temperament. But if you remember, the just tuned major third is actually almost about 14 cents smaller than equal temperament. So you go up much bigger than the descending major third. So you can see this here. We go up 2.039 twice and then only down 3.863. So if it drifts, I gotta confess that I quite like that effect as well. And I actually used that in a piece too. Let me find here it is. And I'm gonna play you a bit of it. This is a piece for solo percussion in the Jack Quartet called Songs That Are Hard to Sing. And this is a very opening movement. So just listen to a bit of this here. So you see this Hemelsellus intonation is actually notating this drift here. This is all sinking down, drifting downwards. Here. Right here. Very low. And off it goes. Leave it at that. You can check out that whole piece if you like. All right, show you one more thing about this adaptive one, and then we'll take a look at the anchored adaptive. So these two parameters, so far everything we've looked at has the fundamental change every note we play. But let's say I want to actually, like in that case, I play a chord like a dominant seventh chord. Each new note in that triad becomes a new fundamental, and so it's tuned kind of funny. What if I wanted to be able to have seventh chords tuned just according to one fundamental, and then after that change? So I'm going to set it to the maximum to 4, so it changes after 4 notes. And I'm going to set the threshold for time, something high, 3 seconds, so that it doesn't change when I would do sort of a normal kind of arpeggio. So now we've got C, and you can see that the current fundamental is still C, still 60. Now I'm going to play a D, and you see the fundamental changed to 62.039 because it changed from its previous fundamental, which was C, and it changed up a just whole step, so 2.039 cents. Okay, I'll do it again. Now I'm going to start on E. Okay, each time I'm getting a full, nice diminished seventh chord. A dominant seventh chord tuned according to the overtone series. Now I'm going to go to G. And I'll go back to C, see what happens. You see that the fundamental has actually drifted by a comma that might be familiar to you by now. Not the Pythagorean comma.